In a world bursting with possibilities, we've come to believe that more is always better, more options, more freedom, more happiness. It's the core of modern life. Walk into a supermarket and you'll find 100 different brands of cereal. Browse online for a new pair of shoes, and you'll be met with thousands of styles, colors, and sizes. Dating apps offer an endless scroll of potential partners. Streaming services boast entire libraries of entertainment available at your fingertips. We are flooded with choice, and for the most part, this abundance is seen as a triumph of modern society. After all, choice is synonymous with freedom, right? But here's the paradox. While we celebrate our ability to choose, we often find ourselves anxious, overwhelmed, and mentally exhausted. Rather than feeling liberated, we feel trapped, paralyzed by the sheer number of options available to us. This is the paradox of choice. It's not that choice is inherently bad. In fact, having some degree of autonomy is essential to our well-being. But when choice becomes excessive, when every minor decision turns into a high-stakes analysis, we begin to suffer. The more options we have, the more pressure we feel to make the perfect one. This phenomenon is becoming increasingly common in today's hyper-connected, consumer-driven world. We live in a time when anything seems possible, and that, ironically, becomes the problem. Imagine standing in front of a wall of toothpaste, whitening, sensitive enamel care, charcoal, gel, foam, mint, cinnamon, 100 subtle differences, all claiming superiority. You didn't think buying toothpaste would be a philosophical dilemma. But now, here you are, frozen in indecision. Multiply that moment across every category of your life: careers, relationships, diets, hobbies. And it's no wonder many of us feel drained before we've even started the day. This is what psychologists call decision fatigue. It's the mental weariness that comes from having to make too many choices too frequently. And it's not just about big, life-altering decisions. Even the smallest, most mundane choices, like what to eat for lunch or what shirt to wear, chip away at our cognitive energy. The illusion of freedom, then, is just that, an illusion. Because more options don't always equate to more happiness. In fact, they can do the opposite. They can cloud our judgment, raise our expectations, and leave us questioning our decisions long after they're made. So if more isn't better, what is? To answer that, we have to look deeper into the very psychology of choice itself. To understand why too many options overwhelm us, we need to look at how the human mind processes choice. Our brains, though powerful, have cognitive limits. Every decision we make, even seemingly minor ones, requires mental effort. We weigh pros and cons. We anticipate outcomes. We imagine how we'll feel in the future based on the choice we make today. When we're presented with 5 options, our mind can handle it. But when we're presented with 50, something changes. We begin to feel burdened. The process slows. Our internal dialogue shifts from curiosity to caution. What if I choose wrong? This fear of making the wrong decision is deeply rooted in our psychology. As options increase, so does our fear of regret. We start imagining all the possibilities we didn't pick, and with them, the happiness we might have missed. This is where regret aversion kicks in. It's a psychological tendency to avoid making decisions that we might later regret, even if the odds of regret are low. And the more choices we have, the more paths we didn't take, which creates more potential sources of regret. You finally decide on a vacation package after hours of research. The trip is fine, even enjoyable, but then you see photos of the second-choice resort your friend picked. It looks amazing. Suddenly, your own experience feels less than, not because it was bad, but because something else might have been better. The truth is, when we believe there's a perfect option out there, our satisfaction with any one choice drops. We become maximizers. people who strive to make the absolute best choice possible, rather than satisficers who are content with what is good enough. Maximizers tend to experience more anxiety, less satisfaction, and more post-decision regret. They also tend to ruminate longer over their choices, even after the decision is made. And this isn't just about consumer goods or travel plans. It applies to serious, life-altering decisions, careers, relationships, even personal identities. But it's not only fear of regret that weighs on us. It's also the burden of what psychologists call the sunk cost fallacy. The sunk cost fallacy is the tendency to stick with a decision simply because we've already invested time, money, or energy into it, even when it's clearly no longer the best path forward. In the realm of overwhelming choice, this fallacy becomes more common. The more time we spend evaluating all the possibilities, the harder it becomes to walk away. We feel we must justify the effort we put in by making the choice work, even if it's not working for us. Think of someone who spends weeks researching which online course to take. They finally choose one, only to realize it's not what they expected. But instead of switching or quitting, they stick with it, telling themselves they've already spent too much time deciding to stop now. This internal tug-of-war creates a mental trap. We end up stuck, not because of the choice itself, but because of the energy we spent choosing. Too many choices overload our cognition, amplify our fear of regret, and keep us stuck in cycles of indecision. And perhaps the most ironic part, we believe that with more options, we'll be happier. But psychology tells a different story. More often than not, too many options don't empower us. They imprison us. In the next section, we'll explore how this abundance of choice takes a measurable toll on our emotional well-being and how it might be quietly eroding our happiness. At first glance, choice seems like a gift, but underneath the glossy surface, there's a quiet cost we rarely talk about. It's not just the stress of making decisions, it's what those decisions do to us, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually, over time. The first cost is stress and anxiety. When every decision feels like a potential life changer, we carry an invisible pressure to get it right. What used to be small, everyday moments, picking a meal, choosing a workout, selecting a book, become micro battles in a much bigger war. The war to feel like we're living our best possible life. That phrase, best possible life, has become a modern obsession. It drives us to compare ourselves constantly. It convinces us that there's always a better option just beyond the horizon. And it whispers that we're falling behind if we don't choose correctly. But what if that constant pursuit of better is what's making us miserable? Studies show that when people are faced with too many options, they report higher levels of anxiety, less confidence in their decisions, and more second-guessing. Even when the outcome is objectively good, it doesn't feel that way. Why? Because the mind replays the other paths, the ones not taken, and in doing so, it plants seeds of doubt and discontent. This leads us to another psychological cost: reduced satisfaction. The paradox is that when we have fewer choices, we tend to be more satisfied with the choices we make. We commit more fully. We appreciate more deeply. We move on more peacefully. But when we're inundated with choices, our satisfaction becomes conditional. We evaluate not just what we gained, but what we might have missed. Our expectations rise and our contentment falls. We may get what we wanted, but it doesn't feel like enough. A person spends hours comparing laptops online, reading reviews, watching videos, weighing specs. They finally buy one, a great one, but a week later they spot a new model, better battery, sleeker design. Instantly, the satisfaction from their purchase disappears, replaced by a nagging sense of, "I should have waited." The more choices we have, the easier it becomes to imagine a better one. And when that imagined better version lives rent-free in our minds, it robs the joy from what we have. This cycle, overwhelm, regret, dissatisfaction, slowly erodes something more essential, our happiness. Because happiness isn't just about getting what we want. It's about feeling like we're aligned with our decisions, like we're moving forward without constantly looking back. But when the weight of every choice lingers, when we second-guess ourselves at every turn, when we spend more time comparing than living, that's when happiness becomes elusive. That's when the gift of freedom begins to feel like a burden. So what can we do? If reducing options makes us happier, how do we protect our well-being in a world that constantly presents us with more? In the next section, we'll explore practical strategies for managing choice, so we can live more freely, more intentionally, and with far less mental clutter. If choice overload leads to anxiety, stress, and dissatisfaction, the answer isn't to eliminate choice entirely. Instead, the solution lies in learning how to manage choice, how to navigate an overabundant world with clarity and intention. It begins with a simple principle: limit your options. This may sound counterintuitive in a culture that thrives on endless selection, but there's real power in self-imposed limits. By reducing the number of options you allow yourself to consider, you decrease mental clutter and decision fatigue. For example, instead of browsing hundreds of shows, make a short list of 3. Instead of evaluating every brand on the market, filter by your core needs and values. The truth is, most decisions don't require exhaustive research. Good enough is often good enough. Next, we must learn to prioritize and simplify. Not all decisions carry equal weight. Choosing a life partner or a career path, of course, deserves deep thought. But deciding what to wear or which coffee to drink, these shouldn't consume precious mental energy. Develop routines, habits, and systems to simplify the small stuff, so you can reserve your attention for what truly matters. Steve Jobs famously wore the same outfit every day, not because he lacked style, but because he understood the cost of decision fatigue. He saved his decision-making power for the problems that actually mattered. Another essential strategy is learning to embrace imperfection. We live in a culture obsessed with optimization: the perfect job, the perfect partner, the perfect meal. But perfection is an illusion, a moving target that can never truly be hit. Trying to make the perfect choice often leads to paralysis. Instead, aim for choices that are aligned with your needs, your values, your current context. Give yourself permission to make a decision and move on. Remind yourself, it's okay not to know how things will turn out. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay to try, fail, and try again. Progress is more important than perfection. It also helps to reframe how we see choice, not as a test, not as a performance, but as a practice. Each decision is an opportunity to learn about yourself, what you value, what you're drawn to, what you're willing to let go of. And with every choice, you can get better, not at finding the perfect answer, but at making peace with the one you choose. By consciously curating your options, simplifying your decisions, and letting go of perfection, you create space, mental space, emotional space. Space to live with more presence and less pressure. But there's one more layer, one that transforms not just how we choose, but how we live. In the final section, we'll explore what it means to live a life of intentional choice, one guided not by what's available, but by what truly matters to you. So how do we move from the chaos of endless options to a life of peace, clarity, and direction? The answer isn't in the number of choices we face, but in the quality of the choices we make and the intentionality behind them. It starts with decluttering. Just as we declutter our homes to create more physical space, we can declutter our decisions to create more mental space. This means removing distractions, unsubscribing from noise, and letting go of choices that don't serve us. It means reducing what doesn't align with our values, so that what does can come into focus. Imagine walking into a room with one beautiful painting on the wall. You see it clearly, you feel its presence. Now imagine the same room with 50 paintings. Your attention is scattered and nothing stands out. That's the difference between a cluttered mind and a focused one. Next, embrace mindfulness as a compass. Mindfulness doesn't just help us reduce stress, it sharpens our perception. It brings us into the present, where real decisions happen. When we slow down, we notice more. Our emotional responses, our physical cues, our intuition. We stop choosing reactively and start choosing reflectively. Instead of scrolling endlessly through options, we pause. We ask, why am I making this choice? What do I really want? What feels aligned, not just appealing? In this stillness, we begin to make choices that reflect who we are, not who we're trying to impress. Another powerful tool for intentional choice is creating a personal framework, a set of guiding principles that define your values, priorities, and non-negotiables. When you have a framework, you no longer need to evaluate every option equally. You filter decisions through your values. This isn't about rigidity, it's about clarity. You're no longer pulled in every direction trying to find happiness in variety. You find meaning in alignment. For example, if you value family over career prestige, you won't chase a high-paying job that demands you sacrifice your relationships. If you value creativity, you won't feel guilty saying no to opportunities that stifle your expression. Your framework becomes a quiet guide, helping you say yes with confidence and no without regret. And perhaps most importantly, remember that not choosing everything is not a failure. It's freedom. We are not meant to live every life, date every person, travel every path. We are meant to choose, and in choosing, we create depth, meaning, purpose. A life shaped not by the quantity of experiences, but by the quality of intention. The paradox of choice doesn't have to paralyze us. It can awaken us to choose less, but feel more, to let go of perfection and embrace presence, to live not in pursuit of every possibility, but in alignment with who we truly are. Because at the heart of it all, happiness isn't found in having everything. It's found in knowing what really matters and having the courage to choose it. See you in the next video.